Welcome back. I've got our second full day, pretty full today as well, so continue to pace yourself in all the activities that we have for you. You probably got an email survey about the conference. Please fill those out and give us some good feedback. Certainly want to use that as we plan and continue to move forward. Also, thank you if you have signed up for our historic walk this afternoon. I hear the weather is going to be good or holding out for us. Nonprofit Technology Resources is our give back this year, and at least as of this morning, we had raised about $2,800. So still not too late to jump in and get started with that. So we have a couple of ARS questions to get us kicked off and going. And take a minute, get your keypads, sitting right next to your coffee. And here's our first question. What smartphone do you have at the conference today? A, iPhone, B, Android, C, Windows, D, BlackBerry, E, other, or F, the dumb phone. Okay, take a minute and vote. I think I know what I expect. Oh, okay. So over half for iPhones. I think a little bit more for Android. So the question for the BlackBerry users is, what are you going to be using in the future after? Okay. Our next question, we got another one. This is for everybody still. How are you staying connected here when you're in Philly? Okay. A, your iPad. B, Windows tablet. C, laptop. D, smartphone. E, I'm not. I've gone dark. So I'm not plugged into the matrix. All right. Ah, okay. Half on smartphones. I like those gone darkers at 4%. Okay, one more question. How old is your state data center? This is for our state government members only. So A, 1 to 5 years, B, 6 to 10, C, 10 to 15, or D, 15 plus. Ooh, wow, okay. Yeah. We need some succession planning there. Okay. All right, folks, we're going to jump into our first topic this morning. It's our corporate CIO panel, the road ahead, partnering with CIOs for the future of success or future success. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Stu Davis, CIO from Ohio, to get us started. Please welcome Stu.
So one of the things that we wanted to do is to sort of learn all the things that are being faced in the corporate world. We know all the things that are being faced from a state perspective, from the workforce to consolidation to data center issues and things like that. And we're wrestling with those things. I was actually at a meeting with Doug Robinson and Thornton May, and they were talking about the duration of a state CIO being 26.1 months. And Thornton May said, well, that's kind of interesting because the job sucks, but it doesn't suck for very long. Which I guess we have that going for us. But we thought it would be a good idea to have a panel of industry folks and corporate folks who are wrestling with the same issues, and maybe we can learn from them on when they look forward and how they move forward through all the changes that we have from a technology standpoint, as well as all the other technology issues that surround the workforce and marketing and all of those kind of things that we all wrestle with. So we'd ask that the Corporate Leadership Council, to sort of provide us some folks that would be willing to come up and share those kind of things. And we're lucky enough to have Cynthia Stoddard. She's the CIO for NetApp. And Larry Quinlan, he's the CIO for Deloitte. And Lee Congdon, sorry about that. I get there sooner or later, with Red Hat. So we thought we would sort of walk through some things, have a variety of questions that we can kind of tee up and have each group look at it. Thank you very much. You can tell it was the 6 mimosas I had earlier today. So just generally speaking, I wanted to sort of have an open discussion, and if there are questions from the audience, just raise your hand. We have some folks that are going out that'll have microphones, so if you can hold your question until a microphone comes up, but if you raise your hand, we'd like this to be an interactive sort of session. So I have some seed questions, and if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you, Lee. How do you keep up with the changes in technology daily, as well as prepare to stay ahead of the technology curve today, tomorrow, and into the future? It's a multi-choice question.
It's a multi-choice. So I actually think this is far easier than it used to be. And the first thing I would say is pick the right people and organizations to follow on Twitter. You'll probably get more information than you want, but you get real-time updates about what's happening in technology. Second thing I do is I'm part of a technology company, so we're pretty culturally oriented to speculating on who's up and who's down, what products are up, what products are down, what trends are happening. And as part of our strategy process, we certainly watch that. So I get a lot of internal support and advice as well. The third thing that I would think about is ask and watch your teenagers. And I'm serious about this. We're headed toward a much more consumerized IT environment. And I learn a lot by listening to my daughter, who's no longer a teenager, and her friends about the tools they use, their preferences for platforms, which social services they're using and why, which websites they visit, which ones they like, what consumer services, and increasingly what automobiles they're picking because of the technology and the platform and so on. So at least those three things. I don't have the problem of picking amongst technology vendors because we use our own stuff, but certainly from a standpoint of monitoring the industry, we do watch closely within the IT organization as well to observe trends and to pick vendor partners.
Cynthia, how do you?
So I agree with everything Lee pointed out in his response. One thing that I would add, which is something that I do, is I think that networking. It's a little bit like Twitter, but more face-to-face. Networking with other CIOs. I belong to a few different CIO advisory boards. Some of them industry, but we're located in Silicon Valley, so I have the opportunity to actually participate in some advisory boards that VCs have. And then you kind of get a view of what's coming. What is coming and what may come your way. And you can take those ideas back into the organization and work. We've also set up an enterprise architecture group, and they look out to the future also to understand what types of technologies are coming and how they can be applied in the business process. So not just from the pure technology point of view, but how can we adapt those technologies and facilitate improvements in our business process?
I think I'd agree that it's not as much as a challenge as it used to be. There was a time when you spent so much time searching for information. Now the information comes in a variety of ways, so I'm not as worried about that. I spend more of my time trying to figure out which ones to pick and how to get them implemented. But I have segregated it into two big areas. We're in the people business. With Deloitte, we have 200,000 people around the world. So I'm very, very focused on consumer kinds of technologies for one area of the business. And then, of course, you have all of the institutional kinds of things you have to do to run an enterprise like ours that exists in over 100 countries, so trying to pick the right things. I am fond of the daughter approach to picking technology. And I actually do that. I would take certain phones, I won't mention which vendors, and I'll give it to my daughter, and she'll say, no, that's not going to fly. And then there was another one. She actually took it to high school and showed her friends, and immediately I said, okay, we're going with that one at Deloitte. I don't think the team knows that's how we actually pick them. But those are the two big areas that we tend to focus on.
What are to sort of follow up on that question, what are the critical components that make you take that leap of faith to jump into a technology and just to put it through its paces? And I'll take that back to you, Lee. Or I'm sorry, Larry.
You know, for me, it's about chasing a business problem that we're trying to solve. And I use the term business loosely because, you know, there's some people who think that a business problem is only one that has great strategic background to it. And I tend to use the word business with a small b. I could be chasing people productivity, for example. If you're in the people business, then I believe just enabling people to work a little faster is in and of itself a great thing. So for me, a leap of faith is when it fits some core business problem that we're trying to solve. So there are lots of interesting innovations that you would look at and say, let somebody else get bloody on those, we'll follow. But then there are a number that fit our model that we'd say, we've got to go fast. So for us, it's mobility, right? We're always looking for the next generation mobile device, the next kind of application we're going to build, because we have people who roam the world constantly where they don't even show up in an office for months sometimes. So we'll pick it based on what's really relevant for us and then go drive that. I'm much more willing to take a leap of faith if it fits that model than something else that, you know, your favorite newspaper has said is the next up and coming thing.
And I would add, we try and take leaps only when we have to. We focus on agile, incremental, maybe trying a few different solutions simultaneously, taking small steps. Our business is changing rapidly enough right now that it's really difficult to make 5-year plans. So picking a solution that we can get implemented, an 80% solution quickly, is typically better than a 95% solution that's going to take a couple of years. So we try and avoid leaps. Sometimes you have to make them, and you have to be very thoughtful, look at all the options, have a careful plan, and so on. But instead, we try and take it in smaller bites right now. And the flexibility that gives us, the nature of our business, and the fact that the technology is evolving so rapidly, that's, for the time being, that's working well.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add primarily to what Larry was talking about, you know, chasing that business problem. I totally believe in being business focused also, but sometimes you might not know how a technology can enable a solution unless you play with it. And one of the things that we've done and I've encouraged is an innovation lab where people within the IT organization and even our business partners, and we're a technology company too, so our engineers can play in a safe place. Some of the solutions don't work. That's fine. Some of them, though, when we figure out how the technology can be applied, then we can say, oh, we can incorporate it into this component within this place in our business process. So, you know, some education and keeping on top of the technology, hands-on playing with it, learn by doing, can be very beneficial.
And I'd agree. We've created this Office of Digital Innovation, which we find very useful, and it helps focus us on some of these emerging technologies and how they apply to us. And the only other thing I would add is I've just stopped agonizing over a number of things. I think maybe it's a function of me getting older. But, you know, we used to agonize over whether it's the right time to do an operating system upgrade, or does it meet some strategic objective, or should we stretch it out longer? And now I've just gotten to a philosophy of those things don't matter that much. Just get them done. And the strength of the organization is, can we just roll out a new Windows operating system or another operating system just as a matter of course? Like, we don't even have to tell the CEO. We don't have to tell anybody.
Right.
It's just,
It's
just do it, right? It's just a
housekeeping.
matter of course. It's just housekeeping. Just make it happen. But you have to have a philosophy, and my philosophy is that a constantly upgrading IT organization will ultimately cost less than one that agonizes over it year after year trying to make that return on investment. Over time, it just gets so old that you have to have these massive forklift upgrades.
So that kind of brings up the cloud to a degree, because we have a lot of legacy systems within the state spend, and how do you move those through and still sort of address the cloud solutions that are there? And I'll throw this to Cynthia, as well as the cybersecurity and the security components that need to be in play for that.
Yeah, so we've, within our organization, we've been very aggressive with the cloud. We've actually adopted what we call a cloud-first strategy. We're doing this in conjunction with, we've built a new data center, and we have the opportunity, and not everybody has this opportunity, but when we're moving out of one data center into the next, we have the opportunity to clean up the infrastructure, clean up our apps, and actually place them where they belong. What we've done is we've created what we call a cloud decision framework, and I'd be happy to share it if anybody is interested in seeing what it looks like. And what it helps us do is look at the type of application, the workload, the capability that we're providing, and help us place it in the right place. Should it be in our on-premise data center? Is it a candidate for a public cloud? Is it a candidate where we're going to look for a standardized solution with SaaS? So that's how we operate. So we've moved our organization into a hybrid cloud using all components of on-premise, SaaS where it makes sense, and then also infrastructure as a service in a public cloud offering. Security is very key, and I would encourage people to start with governance and policies to understand how risk-averse the organization is, because you really need to lay out that as a first step when you put together your security blueprint. So for example, if you're looking at data, which data is sensitive and must reside within your organization? When we look at our cloud decision framework, there are questions like that in there that help. If it's sensitive data that is designated to remain on-prem, then it can't go to the cloud. So, that's our strategy.
Very aggressive for us too. Similar approach, actually. I have challenged my team to be 70% cloud-based. 2 years from now, we're probably 45 or 50% cloud-based now. Primarily software as a service, Akamai to accelerate the websites and deliver the bits and so on. But increasingly moving our core infrastructure, our enterprise service bus that exchanges information about customers, orders, products, and so on amongst our various internal and, interestingly enough, external systems with Salesforce and so on. Pushing that to be cloud-based across multiple providers, perhaps including our internal implementation. And increasingly, because of this consumerization factor we touched on earlier, driving our collaboration solutions, our websites, our document sharing, and other capabilities toward cloud-based solutions as well. I expect that in a few years we'll still have the ERP system and the business intelligence system and maybe a few other odds and ends running in our own data centers. But for us, the agility and the flexibility that cloud is giving us, and the fact that it aligns very nicely with where Red Hat is taking our business strategy, means that it's an easy decision. I probably also have an advantage over some of you in that I've got a pretty homogeneous infrastructure right now, and I'm taking advantage of that. But anytime, as Cynthia said, anytime a greenfield app comes along, our assumption is we're going to move it into the cloud first, and only if there's a good reason not to would we keep it in an internal data center.
So I'm bullish about the cloud, and maybe for a couple of different reasons. My primary interest isn't so much the elasticity and isn't so much the OpEx and CapEx, as I tell my CFO, that's his problem. But fundamentally, I believe the role of the CIO is becoming an impossible one. But the challenge is if I went to my CEO and said that, he'd just go get another CIO who tells him it was possible.
CEO job is impossible too, right? Welcome to the club.
So I'm interested in the cloud because it brings a level of R&D assistance that I couldn't possibly do on my own. So as I go to the next CRM system, should I deal with it myself, or should I go with someone who has invested billions of dollars in R&D in doing so? And the same is true across a wide variety of areas. For us, there are a number of challenges as we go through it, and we've successfully moved parts of it to the cloud. But one, we're a global organization. So there's no way that Germany, Switzerland, and a few other places are going to move in lockstep with the US. Second, we serve the federal government and state governments in a number of ways. And of course, there are issues around ensuring that federal standards are met, et cetera. So the net result of that is, while I'm bullish about the cloud, I have been forced to become pragmatic that you can't expect an organization with that kind of diversity and that kind of global reach to move at the same speed. As a CIO, you have this natural tendency to want everyone to move at the same time consistently. Cloud's not going to be like that. There are pockets of the business that will move first, that have already moved first, and that there are others that are regulated that will lag behind, and then we'll have different kinds of cloud for those. And I've become comfortable with that because now you're solving a business problem as opposed to simply moving it all at the same time in the same place.
So if you think about that from a state perspective, I have 26 different CIOs that don't necessarily report to me. I'm sure other states are in the same boat. You have different sites all over the world that you try to keep in line and try to keep consistent, at least, processes. What advice would you have for the state CIOs on how to get the consensus and the synergy, or is it just a big hammer? I'll throw that to Cynthia for just a second, if you don't mind.
That's a great question. I mean, you can kind of think of your different state CIOs as different divisions within the company.
That's right.
And one of the things that we did to build consensus is, we actually went out and did a listening campaign to understand what their issues were. And when it came back and we put all the information together, very, very similar. So then we brought them together, replayed the information, and people were pretty surprised at how similar the concerns and the challenges were. This really gave us the platform to use that as a method to say, okay, if all the concerns are similar, how can we get together and actually work as a group to solve the problem? And it's worked out really well. And I think a technique like that may help with the state CIOs, bringing them together and then, working to a common goal, a common good. Because whatever you save can be used in order to just further benefit the greater state, in our case, the greater company. Right. It's been a great technique. It was a real eye-opener, actually, for everybody to understand. It's all the same, so why not we pool the resources together? And we use that with our cloud strategy, too. Actually, we bring all of our technology strategies in front of this group.
I have 1,000 follow-on questions. But
Okay.
And I would agree. I mean, I think we first had to establish credibility. So we went out, we listened, we worked with them, we helped them introduce new projects that were of interest to them, not just to us. And then we picked the things where we thought we could demonstrate clear value, ability to negotiate with vendors and get good terms, ability to manage information security consistently across the enterprise, and oh, by the way, negotiate with the information security team to get approval. Ability to manage an incident at 2 a.m. when the alarm goes off and something has to happen, and they aren't necessarily in a position with scale or people staffed to do that. So bringing a set of value add to the table and then working collaboratively to ensure that we're focused not just on our problems, but on their problems. I think sometimes you do need to use the hammer, and that could be in information security or an ROI, a project approval process, or something else. But we've been successful in avoiding that approach and instead trying to collaborate with each of, in our case, business units.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
That said, the more I learn about the state CIO role, the more I feel like I am a state CIO. If you think about the way Deloitte operates around the world, we have, in essence, country practices around the world that come together to serve our global clients. So if you think about operations in Germany or China, I like to say in Germany, we're not a US company with German holdings. We're a German company. In China, we're a Chinese company. In the US, we're a US company. And that creates a set of challenges as it relates to local regulations, et cetera. So we have different approaches to solving problems in different countries. So I serve in two roles. I'm the operating US CIO, and that's much more of a direct, you're responsible for everything that occurs in the US. But I also serve as the global chief information officer for all of Deloitte, all of our businesses. And that is much more like the state CIO role in the sense of really having to influence every country in the world to make something happen, knowing that you can't actually just mandate it. I mean, I could, but they don't actually have to listen. What are you going to do? Go around the world and fire everybody around the world? It's not going to happen. So you actually end up putting in a number of mechanisms. So we sit down, and I had my Global CIO Council meeting in Mexico City last week, and we really sit through and get everyone to trust the process. We're not going to do it unless you vote to do it. But at the same time, after you voted to do it, I'm going to be checking to make sure it gets done everywhere so that we have consistent implementation around the world. A lot of it is relationships, going to countries, sitting, meeting with people, making it happen, governance process, trusting it, and making sure that in the center, we actually deliver what we say we would, because you end up finding that those agencies or those countries will pounce if they don't think you're delivering the service they deserve. Even if they aren't necessarily providing that same service themselves.
Cynthia, did you want to add anything?
No, just one point. When Lee was talking about, the value, showing the value and credibility, a technique that we've used is to show the value, and if you're not subscribing to the value, show what the opportunity cost is. And within this council, it also is very much of an eye-opener to say, okay, if we follow the guidelines, then the cost or the lesser risk ends up being this. But then those areas that don't are either incurring more cost or they're not getting the value that everybody else is. And that helps, get people in line.
So we're a bit in. Are there questions from the audience? And somebody will have to help us tell if there is, because we can't really see out there. Does anyone have any questions so far for the panel? If you could state your name and then your question, that would be great.
Good morning. I'm Dan Lorman, State of Michigan Chief Security Officer. My question is about your global clients. You mentioned cloud and how you're moving rapidly to it. Has the National Security Agency privacy issue affected your customers' decision to move to the cloud? And are they worried? Are you seeing Big Brother issues around customers around the world? Thank you.
Sure. We've seen a significant amount of conversation about it. I think the question is whether or not it will just die down. We've seen some clients outside of the United States asking that their data be stored in, pick your favorite country. We've seen some say, we don't care what country it's stored in as long as it's not the United States. When you sort of take Patriot Act, you take NSA, you take regulatory regime and the litigious nature of the US, you begin to hear some of them say anywhere but the US. So those continue to be challenges, and there is no doubt from my point of view that movement to the cloud is challenged more by a patchwork of regulatory regimes around the world than it is by security. We try to make light of it in some ways. In my CIO Council last week, I noted with some surprise, couldn't figure out why people were surprised that a spy agency with a budget of billions of dollars was actually spying. What it exactly they think they were doing. So I think this will die down after a while, but there will be some where this will persist, and we'll just have to respect that.
I'd say two things. I think this will drive diversity of cloud providers around the globe, and that's a good thing, having multiple choices, assuming we can all have the ability to enter and exit reasonably freely and not get locked into a provider. I would also add that I don't know why one would assume that other governments aren't doing the same thing.
That's true.
And so perhaps there hasn't been as much press or not as much press yet about other governments also spying, but that's one of the things governments do. So I wouldn't assume that your data is automatically safer in a cloud provided by a non-US entity.
It's an interesting phenomenon. They don't actually care. They only care that the US is spying, which is kind of weird to me. They know that other countries are spying, and I won't name the countries. They know that lots of other countries are doing it, maybe even more, but they don't care. As soon as the US is caught doing it, it becomes a flashpoint for them. And I think it simply has to do with our stature in the world, the size of our economy, the perceived dominance for some period of time. As I travel the world, what the United States does is really scrutinized greatly.
You want to weigh in?
I
Nope.
think they've covered it just fine.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to go back to Lee on this one. How will existing partnerships assist CIO and CIOs in preparing for the future and innovative new business models?
Partnership, well, existing partnerships and new partnerships, I think, are critical. We see, as we increasingly move away from doing the basics of computing, storage, and telecom ourselves and rely on partners to do that for us so we can focus on the business problems, as we've all said here, we have to have the right partners. I think of a portfolio of partners, and it really is a portfolio approach for us. There are some technologies that we're probably phasing out, in some cases aggressively. Others are partners that we're working with, have worked with for a long time, and will continue to work with into the future. We're looking at an emerging set of strategic partners and figuring out what they can give us and how we might use their services. And back to the earlier discussion about technology scanning, ensuring we're looking for potential partners and testing them accordingly. So for us, transitioning the repetitive, well-understood routine work to trusted partners, freeing our folks up to better understand the business problems and to become consultants to our business and be technology experts and internal systems experts that they can carry value propositions to our businesses where we're going. So that's critically dependent on having the right partners.
So we have a similar approach. We have what we call a pyramid of providers, which strategic, kind of our everyday, and then down to the niche providers. And we've actually just gone through a process throughout the IT organization to consolidate all the providers that we had into these different categories and really determine which ones are our strategic partners going forward. And with these folks that we're working with that fall into this category, you know, their technology roadmaps are very important. But another really important component to us is the culture of their organization, because it has to align in order for the IT organizations to work together. So we do a lot with understanding how they operate, how they treat their employees, and making sure that we have alignment on culture. We work with the people in we have quarterly business reviews with the key providers. We look at accomplishments, we share our roadmaps, so we're very open and transparent. And we allow them to see what we're doing over the next, I would say 1 to 2 years. But then we also review quarterly because things change. And we want them to be prepared for the change, both with the people or, with any type of commitments that we have financially. So, a very, very tight relationship. And we expect, our providers to put some skin in the game, and we've been successful, working with, I would say, some creative contract terms that, allow them, really a risk-reward type setup between the different organizations. So, trying to be a little creative on the contract side and then narrow it down to key providers that are aligned both on the technology side and then culturally.
Again, I have 1,000 other follow-up questions to that.
Okay.
I mean, how do you structure that in a way from a state government standpoint? How could we do some of those creative contractual type relationship building things?
Well, one of the things that we've done is we've actually, and I don't know if this would work in the state or not, but we've moved the contract negotiations into IT, into a vendor management office. Because we find that in order to do the creative work, you really need to understand a bit about the technology and about the vendor. So then we can kind of craft the terms of the, the deal points. Then we work with our legal organization in order to take what we want and put the right language around it. So if you could look at forming a group that actually was very, contract and technology focused. And, I actually got out, maybe did some benchmarking with, some private businesses to understand how we were structuring some of the contractual terms going forward. I think that would be a benefit to the states.
And I believe that's one of the recommendations that NASCIO has made on the IT procurement reform things that we're trying to do. So that aligns. Larry, do you have anything to add?
I'd say I started my career thinking I needed to do it all myself, and a few mistakes later, I kind of realized that wasn't the way to go. The only thing I would add to this is we've been setting up what we call a project risk framework, which we now find very useful. And we put these projects in quadrants. And there are a large number of projects that we'll do, where we'll say, don't need any extra help on those. They fit a certain risk profile. And then there's some projects that have a technology risk profile, but not a significant business risk profile. And those we need some technical help. So we'll bring in contractors who have certain expertise, et cetera, but it is clearly our project. But there's some projects based on complexity, scope of deployment, level of business risk, regulatory scrutiny, well, we'll put those in that risk quadrant and say, no way are we doing those ourselves. We're going to have a partner working with us. We're going to devote significant level of project management. Now, I'm fortunate, I work for one of the world's largest professional services firms, so I have that kind of ability to draw from the talent of our consulting practices, our security and privacy practices, et cetera. But for me, the issue is that ranking of the projects and that formal approach to assigning a risk rating to them and saying, if the risk rating equals high, then this is what we must do as it relates to outside partners, steering committees, that kind of thing. And one size just doesn't fit all.
Oh, great.
Sunny Bhagwalia, State of Hawaii, aloha. The question that I have is yesterday, the NASCIO published this great state CIO survey. And the survey says that 50% of the state CIOs are very concerned about, mobile device management, BYOD, and all the challenges that we have to go anytime, anywhere, but we have security issues, privacy issues, records management, digital records management issues, e-discovery issues. I would like to get a perspective from private industry, how you look at that, balancing competitive advantage, but also balancing and protecting intellectual property while keeping people connected together.
I'll take that one first. I will confess, I've got a significant advantage. My products are developed in the community outside our firewall, and all of our intellectual property is available at ftp.redhat.com, so help yourself. So we don't have the same challenges perhaps that you have in terms of legal requirements, or that a healthcare or financial services institution would have in terms of specific legal and regulatory issues. At the same time, we do and have to take it very seriously. We have our employee data, we have our customer data, we have unannounced financial information, and so we take it very seriously. At the same time, we have enough flexibility, given that we have embraced bring your own device and started the process of retiring the corporate devices. I expect that, at least in North America, we'll have them retired largely in the next 5 years. We've already done it with the phones, and we'll be doing it shortly with the laptops. Part of that is moving to cloud and making sure the data is secure and captured in a place where it can be accessed from multiple devices. We believe it's going to move pretty quickly toward You'll have your work phone with the big screen. You'll have your social phone that you take out on the weekends with jewels on it. You'll have your small tablet, by the bedside to read, your large tablet downstairs to read the newspaper, the screen in your automobile that will give you updates on your latest meeting and urgent text messages, video conferencing from your home TV, and a number of other devices. And if you don't take advantage of that, it will be increasingly difficult to attract the right people and to get the productivity that Larry talked about earlier from your associates. So finding a way to do it securely is important to us. We think we've got the right balance now. We probably have a different set of legal restrictions, but we're working under the assumption that associates will be accessing our services in the cloud from their own devices as the future state, and we're moving in that direction.
I would say, we spent a lot of time looking at this because mobility is our life. So we have a fleet of about 200,000 PDAs, tablets, et cetera, around the world. And we're driven by two big deals. One is we're in the people business, and second, we're in the client trust business. If you think of the businesses we're in, having the trust of our clients is of paramount importance. So we spent some time really looking at this. I also did an interview with the New York Times reporter, and the gist of his message was, Larry, you should just give up. Corporate IT will never be able to match consumer IT, and that's the premise of BYOD. In looking at it, we took a slightly different approach. We actually realized that when our people asked for BYOD, what they were really asking for was choice. They still actually wanted me to pay for it. They didn't actually want to bring it and pay for it themselves.
That's the truth.
Right. So not a lot of people are clamoring to bring a pink Sony Vaio to work. That's not their issue. They want to know that there's some level of choice. In the case of the laptops, we were primarily a Windows shop. Just a lot of clamor for more flexibility, in particular, adding the Mac operating system. With the PDAs, we had selected one PDA, and they really demonstrated that they wanted choice. So we decided to embrace choice. We still pay for it, but we allow any of the leading PDAs, for example. We allow any of the leading tablets, and we're introducing choice in the laptops. But we're very unapologetic about the way we do it. It's modified. A, we pay for it, so we get the luxury of doing this. But B, it doesn't get on the network unless it passes our security tests. So I'm not taking any shots at Android. I'm just being factual. That is, we only allow certain Android devices on our network because there are others that just haven't passed the security test. And we don't apologize for it. We simply say, here's our website, pick whatever you want from the ones that are on our list. So it's a modified approach to it. And we continue to do that. So we'll continue to look at those trends and determine at what point we should continue to do that. But it's important to decide why you want BYOD. There are companies who want BYOD because they will save money. They will no longer pay for the devices. There are those who simply want to attract talent, and there are those like us who believe that we can have the best of both worlds. We can continue to pay for it, drive the security, allow choice, because that's a business model that works for us.
So we're a little bit of a blend between Lee and Larry. We actually also have a corporate list of devices, which we will pay for and issue to employees. But we also allow, what Lee is doing, people to bring their own. And if it's not on the corporate supported list, then they support it themselves. So it's a self-support, and absolutely a self-support model. So all the way from full support to modified support to self-support. We also have, I would say, adopted a model internally where we work with our employees on awareness. I think that's one thing that you both probably do, but didn't mention. And what we found is the awareness around mobility, the security, it goes a long way because then people are more cautious about what they do, how they download information, how they operate, where they leave their device, why different security measures are needed. So we use our corporate intranet. We have an employee security page there that people can get advice, understand trends. I actually have a newsletter that I send out to the company where we highlight things that people should be aware of. So a little bit of a blend between the two, and then a huge awareness campaign.
I think the awareness is critical, and I think I'm really glad you brought that up. We in IT cannot protect the devices 100%. It's just they aren't within our control. Physical access to a device says with enough time and resources you can basically defeat any security mechanism. So a great part of this is associate understanding of their responsibilities, and just like a confidential document on paper in their briefcase is their responsibility, the way they choose to use their computing devices is their responsibility, and fostering that education and awareness, I think, is essential.
And would also echo that. We did recognize that in our organization, perhaps the end user license agreement on the front of the application was being read perhaps less than the lawyers had imagined. So we were really looking for different ways to get the message across, and our last approach to it seems to be bearing some fruit. But we actually did a video series, and we did many of you know the Southwest Airlines Wanna Get Away series. Somebody did something really embarrassing, they get on the plane and disappear. So we did a Don't Be That Guy series, and somebody did something really stupid, embarrassed themselves with a client, and got caught and started deer in the headlights, and then the tagline is "Don't be that guy." And I think for the first time we reached people, you would actually get emails from people saying, wow, when is the next video series coming out, et cetera. That's the kind of feedback you don't get from people on a regular basis. But I would just echo the point that the whole user awareness thing has become the next frontier, I believe. Because I totally agree, you cannot protect all of these devices in such a target-rich environment like ours.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Nope.
Over here.
No? Okay.
Here, this one over here.
Oh, wait, we have one. See, I can't. You guys see better than I can.
Only certain.
Good morning. Aldona Valicenti from CGI. I want to go back to something that all of you said earlier. You all talked about a governance structure. So how did you pick the roles and responsibilities, and how do you enforce them, or how do you facilitate them? Because I think from a state perspective, that's really required in almost all of the states or all the jurisdictions.
So I can start with the governance structure that we set up. If you look at our governance structure before and after, both are pyramids, but before it really didn't work because, people who screamed the loudest got the dollars. We had technology brought into the company without really a business problem. So we started with what I had talked about before, which is really this listening tour, and going around and finding out what capabilities, what were those pain points for different areas within the company. And then we put it all together. And then we did the readout to all the different department heads, all the different VPs. And that was a real awakening for everybody. And from that, we set up a structure where every VP, every function is represented in the company in the governance structure. It's a mandatory meeting. They can't send a delegate. There's sometimes people can't go just because of other commitments. But generally, I would say we probably have 90–95% attendance at the session. And we talk about everything. We talk about our roadmap. What is the technology roadmap? We cover the budgeting process. We cover the introduction of new technology, things that come out of our innovation lab. And everybody has a voice with a corporate hat on, so they take their individual hat off when they enter the room and put that corporate hat on. We've also adopted internally the PACE layering from Gartner, which looks at categorizing capabilities into systems of record and differentiation and innovation. And it helps having a conversation. Because as we did this, adopted this framework, we've gone through and we colored red, yellow, and green, all of our capabilities. So there may be somebody who says, hey, we need to invest over here. Well, if it's 100% green, it's not the right time for the investment. Let's focus on something that really needs it within the company. So, as far as roles and responsibilities, it really was a collaborative, bring the people together. Since we share the same pain in many different areas, how do we operate as a group in order to bring the company forward on our technology and our business process roadmap?
So I have two main objectives with governance. The first is to ensure that it stays out of my hair. And then the second is to ensure that it's aligned with the business. And the first comment sounds flippant, but it really isn't for me. I always ask myself, what kind of CIO do I want to be? And there are times I find that governance wants to do the CIO job for me, and that's not what I'm interested in. I've often told many committers, if you're going to make all of these decisions, why do you need a CIO? So in essence, we're trying to put governance in the right place, which is about making the right decisions, about prioritizing resources, about determining where the organization needs to go. And that means that the CEOs of our businesses have to get involved, either themselves or through very senior delegates. And I try to get the governance model focused on the big picture issues around resource prioritization, about the level of investments that we want to make in our businesses. So again, just to go back to the original flippant comment, I have lots of people who want to tell me when is the right time to upgrade the email system. And they would tell me, but Larry, is that more important than doing this project for our tax practice? And my view would be, thanks for your input, I'll decide when to upgrade the email system. Why don't we focus on the issues of business alignment, et cetera? And that's a real challenge because some people resent that. But if I can get that alignment, if I can get the big picture prioritization going, if I can maintain the leadership role of the CIO, then for me, I've got the kind of governance that I think would be effective.
For us, it's been a journey. It's not static. It changes over time. 6 years ago, we just needed some friends, and so we were really trying to align our resources tactically with business units that we saw as opportunities. It was an opportunistic approach. After 2 or 3 years, we were able to get to a pretty traditional governance process where we had a technology steering committee that would review the projects, red, yellow, green, each month and so on. And we found that to be valuable, but it got to be a pretty routine process. And last year, we had put a large set of corporate resources behind re-implementing our ERP system. So we really did have pretty much alignment across the entire organization. This year, as we look to our budget cycle and where we're going, we're using the financial processes largely to drive our decisions, meaning each unit in partnership with IT is identifying projects that are going to return to the company. And I'm the business owner for some of those, like collaboration and so on. We're prioritizing that portfolio and making a recommendation. And we don't see a separate IT governance process, but rather part of the overall corporate investment process, just like hiring more engineers or hiring more salespeople is where we're headed with that. Now, I don't believe that's going to be sustainable forever. So within IT, we're making some significant investments in putting an office of the CIO in place to run the business of IT and ensure that we can be transparent, demonstrate value, show our progress on each of the projects. Very much a Red Hat way sort of thing is to be transparent and to share with the various organizations. We've also had good success where organizations' projects didn't make the cut, but they wanted to invest, that we partnered with them and we were able to provide value, they were able to provide funding, and we could execute some additional projects that weren't in the original IT plan. But for us, I would say it's a journey, and governance is going to continue to evolve. As our business changes, as our priorities change, we're likely going to have to do different things.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end here. I have sort of maybe my own personal question. I like to say that, during the course of the week, I feel like I'm in a dryer with 3 bricks, and then Friday I get to regenerate on maybe Saturday and Sunday, and then come back in and do it again. If you had to identify just the one single piece of advice that you could give to state CIOs, what would that be? We'll start with you, Cynthia.
So one single piece of advice, I would say, focus on business value and the relationships. Because if you build the relationships with who you're supporting, it goes a long way. When I moved into this role, I would say that I spent maybe 70–80% of my first few months building relationships with the business users. It helps having conversations about anything.
There's so many things, but I would say
One.
take time to think. I found in my role that was the toughest thing. I was double booked in meetings from morning till night. My assistant found Saturday mornings as her playground to have meetings as well. Then I jump on a plane to go to the next place, and there wasn't an opportunity to really think. And that's when things start going off the rails. So for me, it's sort of a religious thing. You got to pull back and just think about, what are the 5 big things that just have to get done here now? What are the 4 things I got to make sure will get done? What are the 3 relationships got to make sure I build? And yes, I know there are thousands of other things going on, but it's always that pulling back and just thinking for a minute. Okay, what is this really all about? What is it that's really got to get done here? That's what served me well, I believe.
Lee?
So this will come from our open source heritage and roots, but I would strongly encourage you to think about empowering your citizens. There are a great new set of tools available, consumer tools, cloud tools, citizen participation in coding and data availability projects. And I don't understand each of your business challenges. I don't pretend to do that. But it strikes me, as we've alluded to the fact that associate empowerment and making our folks more productive is a key objective for us going forward. I would look for opportunities to empower your citizens, make their lives easier, make government services more accessible to them, making those connect with the digital lives that at least the younger ones are already living, even if, of course, you have to support the legacy systems for those folks that aren't quite there yet. But it strikes me that is a tremendous opportunity. It's going to be fascinating to watch our democracy evolve in the coming years as we think about interconnected mobility, always available, instant access to information. It may drive some fundamental social changes. I think there's some great opportunities to empower citizens and make those tools available to them.
Well, I do want to thank you, and so I just want to recap that because those were all very, very good points. So we have value management, we have value delivery, and we have relationship building. We have take time for critical thinking. I mean, that is key, I think, for all of us in any line of business, really, is to take the time to really think, and we have so many things that are pushing and pulling us to keep us from doing that. I appreciate that. And then empowering the citizen. I think all of those things are things that we can all resonate with. Very quickly, I would like to thank the panel. If you guys could give them a round of applause, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate you guys espousing and giving us some wisdom there, and hopefully you get a little taste of our lives, and we get a little bit of taste of yours, and serious amount of other questions that we would love to sit down and talk to you about. You guys teed up some things, and all my head's going, but I have to keep remembering it's not about Ohio all the time. So thank you again. Appreciate it very much. With time to spare.